The Wind Rises is at its most devastating and its most insightful when it depicts the difficulties of attempting to live and to create in a world that is inevitably marked by exploitation and violence and conquest. There are no easy answers here, and that is a fact I greatly appreciate about The Wind Rises. It, like Princess Mononoke, my favorite Studio Ghibli film, is a film that is profoundly about ambivalence, about the unceasing fragmentation of the world, its deracination from any coherent and stable sense of community and continuity. Instead, there is a climate of violence. There is a climate of hyper-competitive exploitation. It is a climate that only allows the protagonist, Jiro, to create if that creation serves the interests of warfare, of violence, of brutality, and conquest. And the film takes a remarkably nuanced and non-dogmatic stance about Jiro's attempts to create in such a system. Condemning Jiro would be quite easy. One could say that he is simply at fault for not really considering the damage that he is causing through his idealistic obsession with creating planes. That is an easy critique, and one that I think is rather shallow in that it only scratches the surface of what Miyazaki is trying to get at in this film. The film is not pro-Japanese propaganda, as people have wrongly alleged that it is. Honestly, I would think that Miyazaki's vehement opposition to war and violence throughout his career and his personal life would give him some sort of insulation against such charges, but apparently not. This is a film about how do you create in such a world. The answer, oh, you can't, is easy and it offers no real answers. On a societal level, on a grandiose structural level, sure, you can say, oh, it is not possible to create these works of beauty and purpose and try to fulfill a sort of meaning and establish a sort of elegance and harmony when these works are so stained in blood. But then what is someone to do? Are they to deny their artistic passions altogether? No, I do not think that is a reasonable response. How do you escape from this world where every aspect of your creativity is commodified and exploited by this society that prizes violence, domination, and conquest, that has values that are fundamentally opposed to any sort of beauty and harmony and wonder on a societal level, that stands for the exact opposite: destruction, devastation, the annihilation of the human spirit in warfare. Miyazaki does not at all deny that Jiro's dream is cursed. There are a series of sequences in this film, dream sequences, wherein Jiro meets with one of his idols, Caproni, who, like him, is ardently passionate about aviation, and like him, created planes that were used for warfare and destruction, despite not really having any desire to do so, because that is the only avenue for creation in such a perverse and twisted society. Caproni points out that airplanes are cursed dreams. They cannot be these portals to an Arcadian perfect reality that we would like them to be, because they are shaped in the context of their construction by a rapacious and unjust world that economically only valorizes airplanes as tools for violence and warfare. And then we come to one of the film's most striking scenes. It is a scene that has attracted a lot of criticism, and a scene that definitely does not promote good feelings. It does not promote joy and happiness and contentment, but it is probably the most essential scene in the film, the scene that one needs most to understand to truly comprehend what Miyazaki is getting at here in the film. It is a scene about pyramids. He asks Jiro, more or less, is it worth it to live in a world without pyramids? Pyramids being here, of course, a symbol for monumental artistic achievements that nonetheless, because of the circumstances of their making, are tainted by exploitation and suffering, all the brutality involved in their creation. Is it still worthwhile to create pyramids or airplanes, these great objects of elegance and beauty and wonder, these objects that demand reverence and respect and inspire people throughout the generations? Is it worth creating these if they are inevitably stained with suffering? Caproni does not give a quite definitive answer, but the film and he lean more toward yes-ish. It is a fundamentally more ambivalent yes than I think a lot of the critics of this film would like to admit. Even Susan Napier, who has written brilliantly about Miyazaki, and whose book Miyazaki World is a must-read, talks in her section about this film, The Wind Rises, that the film more or less endorses the idea that suffering and exploitation are worthwhile if they result in beautiful, enduring works of art and architecture, or engineering in Jiro's case. But that's not quite what the film is getting at. It's getting at something a bit more unsettling and yet less directly about airplanes or aviation. We, holding ourselves apart from Miyazaki, apart from the film, apart from Jiro, would like to say that the creation of airplanes for war is fundamentally different than, say, the act of creating a film, or the act of creating any work of art, because those works of art are not directly, say, bombing people, and unlike the pyramids, they do not directly require the labor of the oppressed masses. But Miyazaki is cleverer than us. He is cleverer than that superficial, surface-level reading. He implies here that animation, and Jiro is very much a Miyazaki figure here, just like Porco Rosso, is not that different from the act of making these planes. And he means that in a very self-critical way, and in a way that is applicable to situations that are not creating warplanes in World War II Japan. Miyazaki here is saying that in an exploitative and rapacious system, a system that exists only for the sake of profit and practicality, and a system that often requires that profit and practicality to occur explicitly in violence, such as in warfare, or implicitly in the upholding of unjust social structures. To be an artist is to participate in these systems. Otherwise, an artist cannot survive. The only other option is to go live on a mountaintop as a monk, to completely remove yourself from the world. This is not a practical solution for everyone. That is the only way to live a completely pure life in a rapacious and unjust world as an artist, but that is not a solution. We, Miyazaki is saying, like Jiro, have to participate in this system, even though that system is inevitably stained with blood and suffering. Obviously, the utopian dream is to live in a world beyond that system, to live in a world where exploitation is not inevitably intertwined with the production of art, the production of creativity. But Miyazaki argues that it is. Both for Miyazaki the artist, who only perhaps had the money and the resources to properly pursue his dreams because his family made airplanes for the Japanese military during World War II. And for all of us. Now, one could argue that creating art, whether it's a book, a play, movie, whatever, in a system that is sadly corrupt, rapacious, iniquitous, and profit-seeking, is still different from creating planes that are going to bomb Asia and the United States. Miyazaki would say that this is of course true, but that it is a mere difference in degree, not in kind. I think of William Morris, who talks about how art has been degraded by industrialization, by exploitation, by the anti-humanist desire to turn people into things to create profit. And that all art is degraded somewhat because it exists under this system. And Miyazaki would agree. He would say that art is stained, but he is saying that it nonetheless provides a sort of consolation, a sort of inner harmony that cannot be attained through otherwise being in the world. The artistic impulse has value and purpose in bringing a sense of stability even in this cruel, exploitative world that it exists within. The Caproni scenes exist also to demonstrate that attempting to transcend this brutal, visceral link between art and its position within an exploitative system is not easy, and perhaps it's not possible. Caproni is so proud of these planes that he is making that will allow people to peacefully travel great distances over water. He is so enthused about transitioning out of making warplanes and into making planes for this ideal future that he imagines, and yet his plane disintegrates. It fails. Jiro experiences a source of failure too. Critics have noted that the film grinds to a halt of sorts for this romance subplot with Naoko. And to a certain extent, this is intentional. Naoko, for Jiro, is a form of escape. That relationship is a form of trying to make a source of happiness and a source of contentment for himself and for her outside this artistic military world of warcraft, violence, and exploitation. And yet, that world is inevitably transient. Naoko dies. Their romance is brutally cut short. Jiro must return to the world of aviation, the world of creating these beautiful cursed dreams that are his airplanes, of participating in this exploitative, brutal system that nonetheless allows him to attain a sense of peace and a sense of inner harmony through his art. The Wind Rises is not a film that provides easy answers. It is not a film that provides a perfect solution to how to live within a system defined by violence and exploitation. In fact, it asserts that these answers to try to escape the system are futile. And thus Jiro is drawn back into participation in this system that he knows is immoral. That is the situation of the artist for Miyazaki. It is not particularly beautiful. It is not particularly designed to promote a source of contentment and a source of inner satisfaction and reassurance. Quite the opposite. But it does strike me as fundamentally true as a depiction of the artist's attempts to create in a fundamentally unjust and immoral system. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos just like this one before anyone else. Keep watching The Wind Rises and every other brilliant, daring, underrated film made by Studio Ghibli. The title of the film, coming from a daring, haunting poem by Valerie, is one of the film's most thoughtful concepts. This idea that as much as it would be lovely and serene and beautiful to be able to neglect the practical realities of the world, that cannot quite be. The world must be confronted in all its iniquity, and consolation, to the extent that it can be attained, must be attained from engaging with the world, not trying to distract oneself from it. With all of these dreams of a perfect, wedded life with Naoko, for instance, completely outside this brutal exploitative world of Japanese aviation. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.